This is the Seahawkers Podcast, 2022 Seahawks schedule release deep dive. It's become an annual tradition. Put on your tinfoil hat, folks. Dave Bloomquist, a.k.a. Hong Kong Hawk, is coming in here to break down the Seahawks schedule. Dave, you know, this started out being a tinfoil hat show, and I feel like we've gotten away from that, but maybe things will change. Maybe now that Russell Wilson is gone, things will return to normal as far as the NFL trying to screw over the Seahawks. Shoot, maybe they did that already by just launching this season off with Russell Wilson straight out of the gates in week one.
Yeah, well, the tinfoil hat definitely has been put away. And I think half of the reason that it has been put away is because it's no longer a conspiracy. If you listen to the NFL podcasts and just various podcasts, they do start talking about who's playing teams off of byes and who has a lot of road games and long trips between weeks. So it seems that the whole rest conspiracy has become more common now. So no more tin hats.
Yeah, I suppose that more and more people are looking into this. I do see a lot of articles really doing this schedule analysis, similar to what you started doing on this show so many years ago. I feel like I'm starting to see that more and more for each of the teams. And so, I think you're just ahead of your time with this.
Oh, thank you. It's I like to think that I'm a pioneer of sort.
So before we get started, I do think that it's helpful for everybody to kind of hear what goes into your schedule analysis, because really this has to do with, you look at opponents, you look at how many rest days the Seahawks have, how many rest days opponents have, what all goes into your analysis to really find the most difficult parts of the Seahawks schedule.
Well, as you know, with the NFL, you never know. There's no absolutes in the NFL. You have the Bengals who went from last to the Super Bowl. Nobody ever seems to want to win the NFC East. There's injuries. There's sudden stars like Justin Jefferson. You just like people who analyze the schedule by simply saying, oh, they're playing a streak with the Jets, the Giants, and the Bengals. Well, the Jets, the Giants, and the Bengals might be good by the end of the year. So
right.
I never like to focus on the opponents because you can really never predict the flow of a season. However, as we talked about, I do look at things like long road trips and how many times you play consecutive games on the road. Because I think people do get fatigued. Seattle has a history of playing not so good when they play 3 out of 4 games on the road. It's just part of what they do, even when Russell was at the peak of his powers.
Right.
So these are the types of things I like to look at, both between our team and between our opponents as well. So we can actually go into some of these more deep divey type of things that I found about our schedule.
Yeah. Before we get there, though, I do want to get your take about how did you feel when you saw that the Broncos were that week 1 game, Monday Night Football?
Well, it was funny because I was out on a hike and I was listening to your podcast with Adam and Clinton, and I thought all of you had some really good points. I think Clinton was pretty insistent that we were being trolled. So maybe the tinfoil hat has made its way to Connecticut, but
I don't think I can disagree with him either. That's a really good troll by the NFL to go ahead and do that straight out of the gate.
Yeah, I look at it less of a troll than the NFL really wanting to come out of the gates. And I thought that was really interesting where that everybody's really hungry for the NFL by week 1. And normally that first game, that Thursday game with the Super Bowl champion is, Bears, Packers, okay. But this year having Buffalo and the Lambs is just, they really are just like, hey, we're going to come out strong. And then they turn around and they put the Seahawks and the Drew Lock revenge game on Monday night. So I was very surprised about that because I figured they might want to save a game like that. But then again, I figured they might want to save the Buffalo Lambs game.
Right.
So I don't think it was really necessarily a trolling. However, it was an unusual move by them. It was an eye opener for sure.
You mentioned in your intro there about how you look for those areas where 3 out of the first 4 are on the road. Well, after the home game with the Broncos, the next set of 4 games, that 3 out of the 4 are on the road, starting with San Francisco.
You can say about the next 8 weeks.
Oh, until the bye.
Every single one of those games is part of a 3 out of a 4 on the road swing for the Seahawks. It's just crazy. And then, of course, they end up going to Germany at the end of that. So I am not pleased with the sprinkling of road games that happened in the beginning of the season.
It's more of a drenching of road games and sprinkling of home games.
You're right. It was pretty appalling. But one of those games, which is amazing, I still can't believe this. We play at New Orleans, which is our second straight 10 o'clock road game. But they're coming back from London with no bye. So it's so unusual to see that. And I think we got a real treat there to get this team that is doing a lot of traveling and no bye.
So they play in London week 4 is what you're saying. And then they play the Seahawks week 5.
Correct. And it was kind of funny that the Seahawks had that video where they were...
where Will Dissly's telling everybody that they don't have a bye coming back from Germany.
Yeah. And then they turn around, they have that. So that's really good. We all know that the 10 o'clock games have definitely changed for the Seahawks over the last couple of years, but still nobody likes to play at 10 o'clock, especially 2 weeks in a row. So to be able to play a team coming back from London without a bye as one of those games is actually a very good scenario for us.
That's good. One advantage point to us then. Are there, other than the 3 out of 4 being on the road, are there any other disadvantages in that first 5 or 6 games?
Well, actually, we have 2 really good things that happen for our 2 home games. So we play Atlanta in week 3. And that's their second consecutive West Coast trip. They come off of the game against the Lambs and then have to go up to Seattle after that. That's always positive. And then after we come back from New Orleans, we've got the Shartnels with no Hopkins. So that's kind of nice.
And I like how you're sprinkling through. Now, Dave, you have come up with this tip. And see, this is maybe an exclusive tip to our Seahawkers podcast Ring of Honor members on Facebook. Like, you have coached everybody to use these nicknames for the opposing teams, because it turns out invariably in Facebook, we're talking about our rivals. And then when you do that, you end up getting served ads as if Facebook thinks that you're a fan of that particular team. But if you use these nicknames that Dave is throwing out here in the episode, then it confuses the algorithm. Well, it helps you in terms of the algorithm because, you know, Facebook doesn't think and confuse you with a fan of that team. And so, yes, you don't have to see all those crazy ads of your rivals. And I'm glad you've worked that out.
Well, that was a discovery I made during the Cheatriots years, because I would never get any focus ads for the Cheatriots. But then suddenly they'd be trying to sell me a Lamb sweatshirt. And I'm like, what is going on here? And then I realized that I was putting the R word in some of my comments. And I'm like, okay, enough of this nonsense. But I do suddenly get a lot of ads for lamb food. You know, you think I'm a farmer or
That's
something,
okay.
I guess.
You know, you could live with that. Okay, PSA out of the way, continuing on with the schedule. And let's see, getting into, so this is kind of another, well, like we said before the bye, there's the Chargers, which is the away game. Then it's back home against the New York Giants. Then we do have the Cardinals with DeAndre Hopkins likely back at that point, and then on the road at Germany, which really, I'm hoping that that's going to be a home game, but technically a away game for both. So how do you categorize that?
Well, when we went to the England game, I thought that was really great because there were clearly many, many more Seahawks fans in Wembley. However, we saw there was Raiders painted in the end zones, and we had little Raiders flags on our seats. So it didn't matter that we were the loudest ones. We knew we were at a Raiders game.
Yeah.
So that's what it's going to be like over there. There's going to be Buccaneers painted in the end zones. There's going to be Buccaneers banners.
They're going to fly in the pirate ship.
Yeah, I don't need that. Although Allianz Stadium is really cool. I don't know if you've seen pictures of that thing, but that's one of the better stadiums in Europe, and I really look forward to seeing that. I also look forward to all the activities that come around the game. I think we had a lot of fun in London, and I've never myself been to Germany, and I'm really looking forward to it. So hopefully a lot of Flockers will be over there. But one thing that distresses me about this Germany game is that it is directly after our game at the Indian Burial Ground.
Right.
So we don't know who's going to be going on IR and missing the Germany game at that point. Could be anybody. But the Buccaneers actually are coming from a home game to go, so they have a much shorter trip.
Sure.
So, for what that's worth, that is a very long trip from the burial ground to Munich.
And we know that the Seahawks have done better with the 10 a.m. start times, but how about a 6:30 a.m. start time? That we don't have a lot of data on.
Yeah, I couldn't be happier, because if for whatever reason I'm still here and not at that game, that'll be at 9:30 on Saturday night. So that's actually a cool time to watch a game. I could actually go to a bar and watch a football game. But I'm going to make sure that I'm there. I'm going to pull every string I possibly can to be there.
So then the Seahawks, they get their bye after that. And again, I don't know how long it's been since we had a nice, good mid-season bye, but I like the Week 11 bye.
Yeah, the Week 11 bye is good. Unfortunately, it does have to come after a Europe game, because a couple days of that are going to be travel and kind of readjusting. It's better if you can just go down to Cancun and sit on a boat. But again, it is really special to play in Europe. So I'm glad they're doing that.
And then after the bye, Dave, it's 5 out of the last 7 games are all at home. And now with the 17 game schedule, this is the year that the Seahawks have more games at home than on the road. And for whatever reason, the NFL just decided to put all of the games after the bye essentially at home, apart from 2. And so, we go into this last section with a very heavy home schedule. Yeah,
and I think that people probably look at that and they're like, "Oh, great, we play a lot of home games at the end of the season. This will be good. If we're even a little bit in it, we have a good push." No, that's not how it works.
Oh,
Now, the good thing is when we come back from Germany, we face the Raiders at home, and that's their second consecutive road game. So they play a tough game against Denver, unless, of course, the Let's Ride curse has taken Russell out at that point. One can hope.
For purely draft pick status.
Right, not because he's creepy and
come on, we still have to have some affection for our former quarterback. I don't know if I can go all in on the sports hate quite yet, but I can root for a curse so we can get a better draft pick. I feel like that's where I'm at.
All right, well, I'm going to stay on brand and tell you I hope they turn him into a pretzel in game 1. So after the Raiders game, we go to SoFi, and then that's right before the Lambs have a short week. So for what that's worth, maybe that'll work to our advantage. Then we play Carolina at home, and this is the second straight time that Carolina has come to Seattle off of a bye. So they have a week 13 bye just so they can come rested to Seattle. Then we turn right around and we have our short week against the Whiners.
Mm-hmm.
Then we go to Kansas City.
But they would have a short week too, right? With that being a Thursday night game?
Yeah.
And they travel to Seattle.
Right. But nobody likes short weeks. So
that's true.
And then our last 2 home games, the Jets have a mini bye before they come to Seattle, because they play the Thursday night the week before. Real good Thursday night game. Jacksonville and the Jets, week 17. Everybody will be glued to their TVs.
Circle your calendar.
And then this one I love. So the Lambs are playing their second straight road game in Seattle for the last game of the season. But this road game, I'm making air quotes here, is at SoFi against the Chargers.
Oh, jeez.
So the Lambs actually get 10 home games this year.
Right.
The Lamb spiracy lives. Quentin cannot have my tin hat yet.
That couldn't have been avoided, but it is kind of interesting that they put that game in week 17 before they have to come to Seattle.
Yeah, of course. Why not?
All right.
But to be honest with you, we'll get to this in a little. I personally don't think it's going to matter at that point.
Because the Seahawks will have sewn up the division with Drew Lock by the time they get the victory over the Chiefs in week 16. That's what you're going to say, right?
Hey, Tim Moon, can you get Brandon back here, please?
Tim Moon is our resident optimist in the Facebook group. Yes.
He has to dial it back to be considered an optimist. So a couple little oddities, which work in our favor in some points and not in others. I do agree with you that the timing is very good on the Broncos game with the new coach and the new system, possibly Jerry Jeudy being out, a road game, hostile environment. I don't know what to expect from people when Russell comes out to the field. I personally would boo.
Oh, yeah. Of course.
So I think that getting him in week one and getting that over with in probably the best scenario as far as him not being adjusted to his new team. He'll probably take a left instead of a right when he's trying to find the locker room, and he'll be totally discombobulated. So I'm okay with that game on week one. From week 6 on, other than the Germany game, we travel no further east than Kansas City, which is kind of good. We don't have those long road trips to New York or Florida or anything like that, which is good. We always seem to be going to Philadelphia or Washington or something, so that's not happening.
That's a good point. With all of the air miles that it says the Seahawks are due to travel, a good portion of those come in the preseason when they're playing Pittsburgh, right? And then it's Saints Lions are really the longest trips apart from the Germany game.
Yeah, and I do find that funny when they were making a big deal, that meme with the long road trip, and it is all Germany. It's actually fairly positive as far as the travel in the second half of the season. Unfortunately, it's neutralized by some of our opponents' buys and mini buys, but at least our team won't be so tired.
Right.
So a couple of things that I noticed about our opponent's schedule. Cue the Lambspiracy music. The Lambs do not play west of Glendale, Arizona until week 9.
Wow.
That's chew on that for a second.
Wow.
And then they do play 6 of their last 10 on the road, and I put an ish on that because of that last road game, which is a home game. And then
are you counting the 49ers games that are played at SoFi, though, as road games? Because that might even it out.
Yeah, there you go. I forgot that. Who's this team you talk about? The Winers,
the
right?
Winers, yes. Sorry.
Okay. That's okay. Just may you get a hat ad for that. So also the Lambs have 4 straight national TV games between weeks 14 and 17. So while we're winding down our year, we're just going to have to be force fed the Lambs at the end of the year, and that's unhappy emoji right there.
No, that's not good.
The Shartnals, they play 1 division game in the last 7 weeks. That is the most unusual thing I've ever seen, because they try to pack the division games at the end of the year.
Right.
And I almost feel that might be a little bit of a conspiracy building there, because they know the Shartnals are so bad at the end of the year. It's like, hey, when they're still winning, we'll put the important games in the season. At the end of the year, we'll just kind of throw them out to the donkeys.
That does feel like more of a benefit to them. Of course, maybe the NFL didn't count on Hopkins being out, though, those first 6 weeks.
No, but I think they did make a very shrewd trade to get Hollywood Brown. I think he'll be an adequate replacement.
If he can catch the ball. He's always dropping passes. I don't think he's going to help as much. He's no DeAndre Hopkins.
Well, he was on my fantasy team, and I have a small affinity for him.
Well, but not infuriated by the drops then. Okay.
No, but he did pretty well. he got a lot of points. What he did catch was pretty good. So the Cardinals also have 3 home games and a bye in one stretch, which is actually really good. You want to be home.
I have to laugh at the Cardinals every time. That may be your best one.
Oh no, that's props to Clinton. He came up with that one.
Okay. See, I feel like whiners and lambs have been around for ages, but there's just something particularly sophomoric about the Cardinals that just gets me.
Well, I was actually using the quite politically incorrect term before Clinton came up with Cardinals.
It is an improvement.
Yeah, but it again goes off my brand. Okay, so the Whiners, they play 3 or 4 on the road, including 2 on the East Coast in that stretch, which is good. That's a bad thing to have. That's a very Seahawky type of scheduling. And then they have 3 straight home games, followed by their game against the Cardinals in Mexico City, which is considered a home game for them. So technically they have 4 straight home games, which has never been done in the history of the NFL. But one of them is kind of a fake home game.
Right.
And then this is the other one. They do not play west of Las Vegas for any of the last 12 weeks.
Wow.
Other than Mexico City.
Which is the
neutral game.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So between the Lambs and the Whiners, they don't leave the West Coast, and it just does not seem possible with the way the NFL is geographically. But there you go.
That's pretty crazy.
These are the small things that generally, I look at as these schedule oddities and these deep dives that really affect how a team plays towards the end of the season. Teams get tired, teams get fatigued, and now you have 17 games, and that's even exasperated from that. So these are things to look at.
Right.
So we were talking earlier about the outcome, the possible outcome. Now I went through the schedule. Now I know this kind of goes against what I was saying earlier, but if I was to just kind of go by opponents, I kept getting 7-10, which really blew my mind because that was more than I thought it would be. I have always been a fan of, hey, you know what? Go ahead, have a couple bad seasons in a row. I thought we had a terrific draft. I really loved that draft. And if we have a second draft like that, and I don't even, I'm not even talking about getting a quarterback out of it. I'm just saying have a good draft with good players.
A really good quarterback.
Yeah, it would be nice to be able to be in the position to get that good quarterback, especially if we don't have to trade assets to get him. But I just love how we build our line and our secondary in this draft. I thought it was great. And then, everybody who was, I think, wrongfully complaining about Kenneth Walker have not been using their eyes and seeing, our 2 main running backs can't finish the season.
Right.
So, I was more than happy to get a guy, our Jonathan Taylor type of guy. So I'm, through my history of being a Seahawks fan since the 70s and seeing those very bad years in the 90s and the early 2000s, it's like I am totally at peace with having a couple bad seasons. Still love the team, still entertain me, still love watching them. But if the result of another 5-6 win season gets us in that position to build towards 2023, I am totally cool with that. So I think 7-10 is quite ambitious of a
I feel like this
prediction.
is you giving Pete some credit, Dave, because I know you've been one of the people who have been calling for change, I think, for, it's been at least 2 or 3 years now. I feel like you were more toward the start of this than most people.
Yeah, and like everything else, I'm like ahead of it. So when Pete finally goes fishing for the last time, I think you're going to see a guy come in and just be really good, and they'll say, he was right. He should have gotten that guy 3 years ago. I mean, I can't think of the dude from Green Bay. If you remember, I was saying that when he was still with Tennessee, I was like, get this guy in here. I want this guy.
Oh, yeah. LaFleur.
LaFleur, right. And here's this guy. He's gone 13-3, 3 straight years. And, cry all you want about the playoff performance, but I think that's more Rodgers than LaFleur. The guy put together a good team. So, yeah, I think Pete has maxed out his effectiveness.
So would you have been more on board then with keeping Russ and moving on from Pete? Like, would that have been your preference, or would you have preferred wipe the slate clean, start fresh?
I would have rather have kept Russ, but I think that when we look in hindsight, Russ wanted to go, and there was nothing that was going to stop Russ going. And again, I'm one of the people who look at that trade, the 2 firsts, 2 seconds, 3 players on top of that. I think we got a good haul for him. I think I was mad that we didn't trade Russ the year before, because I thought that's when we could get maximum value. And I was just blown away when I saw what we got for him. So I'm happy. He's a 33-year-old quarterback who didn't want to play with us anymore. And he threw the worst interception in NFL history. So
right. And we can always hold that against him now.
Well, now it's easy to hold that against them, and all the cringe Instagram.
Well, yeah. So. I mean, we could ignore that for so long as he was our quarterback, but now we will not let it go.
Yeah. But in spite of all this, in spite of my total comfort with Russ moving on, you know what? I'm going to sit back and I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to love that first game. It's going to be very good theater. I love the fact that Buck and Aikman moved to Monday Night Football, because I can get rid of them and watch the Manning cast.
They're perfect.
Yeah.
See, right? Here I was encouraging people to attend the game physically, but for those people that don't have that option, there's the Manning cast.
Yeah. We never have to listen to those two again. And then Germany was just icing on the cake. When I saw that Tampa Bay was playing the Germany game, I was just praying that the Seahawks would be the opponent.
Yeah, I'm fired up for that too. Going back though, is it going to be tough? I mean, we've already seen Manning and Russ doing these videos. Is Peyton just going to be homering for the Broncos, the whole Manning cast? Like, would it be tougher to deal with the Troy Aikman Seahawks hate, or the Peyton Manning Broncos love?
Well, to be honest with you, Brandon, I could watch a booth with Peyton Manning, John Elway, and Terrell Davis calling every Seahawks game and be happier than watching a Buck and Aikman game. Those two are insufferable.
There we go. Okay. I had to get that in perspective. I understand.
And, just for the humor alone, it would just be funny to hear what they say. Because I think that Manning is very good in trolling as well. So, I think if any little thing goes wrong, maybe if things go right too, he'll still be trolling Wilson throughout that game. It'll be good.
Anything else that you want to make sure that we cover before we get on out of here, Dave?
We should temper our excitement over how we think they're going to finish. I think if you set your expectations low, you can have nothing but excitement if things go differently than what you expect.
I think 7-10 is a fair record to. I mean, gosh, if you would have told me that the Seahawks, before this offseason, that they'd lose Russ and you could still pencil them in for a 7-10 record. Not saying that that's what they'll get to, and maybe it is worse. I feel like we should expect worse losing a franchise quarterback like that. But if that's the way that it feels, it gives me a little hope that it's not going to be a completely miserable season.
Yeah, and I think one thing that we have to keep in mind is Pete won the battle. Pete is the one that stayed. So we're going to see Pete ball. So whether it's Walker or Penny or Carson or a combination, all Locke's going to really be doing is handing the ball off 30 times a game. And if that keeps us in games and, we snatch a couple of those victories at the end, get a field goal or whatever, that's how we're going to reach that 7 and maybe beyond that. So I guess my biggest cause for optimism is that Pete's going to run the offense that he wants to run. And as much as I think he's way past his prime. He clearly is a good coach, and he's going to do something with what he has without the resistance of, precious Russell Wilson.
A big thanks to Dave Bloomquist for coming on, breaking down the schedule. Every single year we've been doing that, and man, it's fun to get his deep dive into it. And as we all hear Clinton rattling around in the background, we transition over to a new show that is going to be coming out via the Seahawkers podcast feed in the fall. I don't know, maybe you guys will do something more in the summer as well, leading up to the season. But we've got the PNW Prop Stars, Clinton Bonner, Wilson Conn. They're going to be going through some fun bets upcoming for this season. So, gentlemen, how you doing?
Brandon, we are fired up, Brandon. It's a whole new year. It's a whole new you. We have a new quarterback. Maybe we have two new quarterbacks. We don't know, right? We don't know.
I've been telling people, Clinton, I am fired up that we have. We're one of only about 8 teams that have 2 quarterbacks in Chris Sims' top 40 quarterbacks. So, I mean, it's hard to be, this good.
It's something, right? Which is cool. And so the quick origin story, I'm a comic book fan, and I'll certainly introduce and hand it over to Wilson in a second. But, I got to know Wilson through the Field Goals pods that were out there, right? He's producing your stuff. I'm like, this guy seems like a pretty cool cat. Following him on Twitter, know a little bit about his story out in Princeton. But I see him tweeting all last year, all these prop bets. And I'm like, God, this guy's got some good ideas. Like I like his prop bets. And I would, comment on some of them. Like, yeah, I bet the same darn thing. And with the advent of DraftKings and everything else and FanDuel, Wilson and we got to talking. I said, hey, dude, we go to, Brandon and Adam and say, what do you think, man? What do you think about a the only Seahawks only podcast out there focused on Seahawks gambling? And with that, Wilson said yes to the dress. So, dude, Wilson Conn, welcome to the pilot show for, PNW Prop Stars. And Brandon, thank you for the opportunity to put it on the SHP, if you will, man.
Absolutely. I will turn it over to you both, and you guys can close this show as Bloomy and I got it kicked off. So have fun, everybody.
All right. Thank you, dude.
Thanks, Brandon.
Yeah. So Wilson, man, for the folks, there's probably folks who know the name, right? They know the name, and you're a youngin, which is I won't hold that. I won't hold your youth and inexperience against you, man. But there's probably lots of folks who've only heard the name. They've heard that, on the Field Goals podcast, where it's like written and produced by Wilson Conn. Give him a follow on Twitter, but maybe a little intro. Why don't you, instead of me telling your story, why don't I pipe up and you tell your story about how are you a Seahawks fan? What are you doing with your life? What should people know about the Wilson Conn?
Yeah, well, first thing I should say is I'm not of legal gambling age. I'm 20. So take everything I say with a grain of salt. I'm not allowed to be on DraftKings or anything like that. I will say I've been a Seahawks fan for as long as I can remember. I grew up in Seattle. My family since moved to the Bay Area, which is, the worst place to be if you're a Seahawks fan, but we get by considering how things have gone against the Niners in recent years. Not a lot of trash being thrown my way. So yeah, excited to get going. Really got into kind of betting last year. So really excited about it.
Yeah, you got into betting, but but you couldn't, just for the fun of it, right? Just
I wasn't spending any money. No,
right. For the lawyers that are out there, just looking at the lines, the dude goes to, if you want folks to know or not, whatever, they follow you on Twitter, they're going to find out. The man goes to Princeton. So we're talking about a smart cat right here. No pun intended. And, but you were throwing out some cool combos, some nice parlays. I was like, all right, this guy's got, he has a pulse here. And so anyway, like we said, we were like, let's concoct a show that just focuses. The one thing, Wilson, as we get going is people are always like, oh, dude, I never bet on my team. And I'm like, you know what? This is the team I know way, way, way more about than any other team, any other sport. So if I'm going to put like a tight end prop last year that, Gerald Everett over 4.5 receptions or something like that, I just don't get I'm not going to bet on my team. It's like, no, this is the exact team I'm going to bet on. Win, lose, or draw. I'm not going to be superstitious about it, but I actually know about this team. So I am going to lay some wood this year, and I'm fired up for it. And hey, when you turn 21, I'll give you your first $1, dude. I will give you $1.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I will say about betting on the Seahawks, it's not maybe just that you don't want to bet on them, but also you don't really want to bet on them to cover ever. I can't tell you the last time I remember the Seahawks covering a game. Maybe happens 2 or 3 times a season, and it's a real surprise. So I'm sure we'll get into that more as the season kicks off. But
we certainly will, dude. And that's why props are fun, right? It's not always about, certainly not always about the money line or just the spread. Those are fine. Those are kind of your pedestrian bets nowadays. But it's the kind of in the lore of 3 in, 3 out. It's the nooks, it's the crannies, it's the little things you find out, and you're like, oh man, this matchup favors this thing. And by the way, when we do the show, it's going to be, 85, 90% focused on these Seahawks games. It doesn't mean we won't take positions that might be a prop that's like, hey, some other dude is going to achieve this against Seattle. There's no way in hell I'm ever betting Seattle to lose. Like, I'm not going to bet Seahawks to lose. Not doing that. That ain't going to happen. And I'm not going to even take Seahawks, to not cover, right? I won't do those things. But certainly props that are like, okay, this cat's going to catch 5 balls out of the backfield. Yeah, like those are things we'll talk about. And I guess the goal will be another way to talk Seahawks football, and why not? Number 2, maybe folks can have a little fun with this and maybe make a little scratch along the way. And it's just entertaining. It's another way to look at the game through the lens of the individual players and what they can contribute, which I'm super fired up about. So I know you're not on DraftKings because of the legal age or FanDuel. But with that, though, just to give the folks like a flavor, what are your kind of favorite types of bets you usually look for in general anyway?
I really like kind of what you were talking about, like the sort of single game receptions, I think are a good one. Especially, I think it can be hard sometimes with the Seahawks, just because you never know if it's going to be Lockett or Metcalf week to week. But there are some opponents where you can kind of parse it out. And it's kind of what you were talking about. It's really being familiar with what the Seahawks like to do against specific types of defenses and things like that can make, especially those reception props, like really work out. That's what I would say.
Yeah. Those, I love the reception props too. They're fun because first of all, I love betting an over versus an under anyway. Oh, yeah. So like your reception props are usually going to be like over 5.5. And so it's fun. Like I really enjoy like watching like a Sunday night game where I might not even really care about it otherwise, except for the fact that I like to watch football, not even a Seahawks game. And I'll like throw whatever. All right, I got Jarvis Landry over 5.5 receptions. And then you're literally counting and you're like, it's like late third quarter. He gets his 5th. You're like, he's going to do it. And then like Jarvis Landry like disappears for a quarter. You're like, and drops the ball in the end zone. Like what the, come on, man. But it's fun. It's a new, like I said, another way to enjoy the game. And with the apps being so user friendly and so specific with how you could dive in, that's what we're going to focus on. And we should tell the people too, we absolutely plan on having other people on the show. Like, Adam for one, he's going to join different episodes when he can. He likes to just look at these as well and put some Scott-O on a couple of games too. So we'll get Adam's take sometimes. And then we're going to reserve, another announcement for another time for maybe the August preseason. But we have a kind of a special guest lined up that we're really looking forward to bringing on week in, week out as well. And it's going to be a lot of fun. So I think before we close out today with the little announcement, hey, listen, the schedule came out, the season totals and some other bets were available to go look at. So I figured, why not kick things off the right way? If you're going to do it right, let's do it right and look at some of these preseason bets that you and I are already eyeing. So I'll defer to you. It's a age before beauty type thing here, my man. So if you're looking at, all the available bets that are out there, which one's kind of catching your eye so far this year? Let's say Seahawks first, and then we can mosey off the path because there's not so many games we could bet on just yet that are Seahawks related.
Yeah, well, I know you guys talked a little bit about the over/under 5.5. I got to go over there. I won't belabor that one too much. Just by being a Seahawks fan, I would find it hard to root for the under. But one that I came across today that was really interesting, I was actually looking at bet for who will be the rushing champion this year in the NFL. And Penny actually has 4 times better odds than Kenneth Walker, which I found was really interesting. Kenneth Walker's plus 13,000 to be the rushing champion, as Penny is plus 3,300. So that really, the Walker one especially, struck me as a really interesting bet that, hey, maybe you just throw $20 on and, a few months later you wake up with $3,000, almost $3,000, in your pocket. And that's an easy one to root for too, because I think he's probably the best running back on the team at this point, even though he hasn't stepped on the field yet.
But I agree with you. I mean, that people who know my voice know that I'm not the hugest Rashad Penny fan. Although, hey, credit where due, he ended his season really, really well. He earned the money they gave him. But I love. Hey, listen, gamble a little to win a lot. It's okay if it's like, especially a season long bet, right? You're like, yeah, it's $20. I could put it in there, and if Walker starts to take hold, and it's like that becomes a fun second half chase. Because if you're just in it, it's like the Belmont Stakes. It's like the longest race of the 3, right? So you just got to be kind of in the pack, and it's like, all right, is this guy trending the right way? Right. Is he going from like 10 to 12 touches to all of a sudden he's shown to be the guy, 14 to 17 touches, and holy crap, he's getting 18 touches plus a game, and mostly he's going to run the ball. Hey, $20 to win. What was the payout on that one?
2,600 space. Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, that's for a $20 flyer on a dude who has all the skill. It's just going to be an opportunity thing on a team that we know likes to run the ball.
Right.
Heck, man, I'm into that one a lot. And I quickly want to go to the Seattle over under we talked about on the schedule release also. Super quick, like you said, not to belabor this one. It's Seattle over 5.5. I like it a lot too. Now you got to pay to take that position. The money line's about 140 against you. So for those who are not familiar, you'd have to lay what? You have to lay $100 to then win 60. I think that's the way it breaks that way, right? So something like that, where and we'll get a little crisper with our math, seeing as it's a gambling show. But you're laying the juice, as they say. So you got to lay the lumber to get to make a little bit less back. But that also shows you that not only Vegas, but the betting public is liking that bet. They're probably seeing the same thing we're seeing, as in totality, going like, yeah, I understand it's the Drew Lock or Geno show. And with that, this is not that bad of a roster. It's actually an average to above average roster, I think. And the schedule is not that bad. They play some bad teams, right? They're playing Carolina. They're playing Atlanta. Yes, there's teams that should improve. Giants, Jets, Detroit, all should be improved, but they're not good teams yet. They're not quite there yet. So I like that position, and I like and that's it's a nice easy street one. And the flip side of that one is, if we win under 5.5 games this year, it's not the worst thing for our Seahawks going into 2023. It's like, cool. Then we know we're probably in the top 5 or top 3 with our picks. It clearly did not work, and now we're going after our quarterback. So I kind of like those no lose positions.
And we'll have the Broncos first rounder in the top 5 as well. So
correct. After Russell Wilson's arm falls off. That is correct. Awesome, dude. Hey, I had one more Seahawks one, but before I give it, did you have any other Seahawks focused ones?
I was really just focused on the rushing one. I really liked.
Yeah, all good.
That's pretty much it. I saw DK Metcalf is plus 50,000 for MVP. If anyone's feeling lucky out there, Geno did like him more than Tyler. So if Geno's the starter, hey,
DK's numbers with freaking Geno were off the chain and DK caught fade passes from Geno, and I'm not gonna go any further than that. I think Drew Lock ought to be the starter. Probably will be the starter. I think eventually wins that role, and by eventually I mean week 1 he is the starter. But Lock has a freaking hose. Lock can throw the ball deep and uncork it. But yeah, hey, 50,000. That's not bad odds. They're very good odds, right? So one other one that I liked out of the gate, Wilson, is, so you got the Seahawks at quote unquote Seahawks at Bucks game that's going to be played in Germany. Mm-hmm. That was Seahawks. Last I looked at it, Seattle getting 10. So I took a small, quite small, but I took a small position through the FanDuel is my app of choice. I'll use DraftKings. I'll kind of search which one gives you the better flavor, but I like FanDuel mostly. I think the interface is better. And And I took a small position with Seattle getting 10. I'm like, all right, first of all, is the NFL looking at this as a true home game for the Bucs? Probably not. There's going to be more Seahawks fans there in general. They both got to travel. And at plus 10, the way I look at it is like, if our starting quarterback gets injured, we have a second starting quarterback who is in Chris Sims' top 40. So we're okay. If Tom Brady gets injured, the Bucs, that plus 10 probably shoots down to Bucs plus 1 or Seahawks giving. So it totally tilts over. So by November, let's see what happens with the 45-year-old, a game in Germany. Carroll knows how to keep games tight. I will take 10 early points. Wilson, here's the deal, dude. We play that game November, whatever it is. Right now, Seattle's up 10-0. We're up 10-0 in that bet. And that feels pretty good, dude.
Yeah, I think kind of what you mentioned too, that is a really good time to take that bet just because it's not only going to be a Seahawks home game, but also you're kind of playing with Brady's health there too. It's, he hasn't shown any signs of wearing down, really, surprisingly, but you never really know.
No, you don't know. And I think Seattle's going to outperform the first couple of weeks of the season because the schedule's not that bad, right? So I think they get out of the gate maybe 2-2, maybe 3-1. They do that, then that Seattle plus 10, it's like, all right, this team could hang. This team probably is not making the playoffs. We've talked about that. But if we can win 6, 7, 8, 9 games, kind of be in that range, I guarantee you we're gonna lose some games this year that are tight because of the way we play football. So you want to give me 10 points against a team that's playing in Germany? I'm gonna take that bet. And I did, man. So all right, so let's rotate. That's what we got for the Seahawks so far. But how about some other just NFL wide bets that you were looking at that were like, a couple things that made you go, as you started to look at some preseason things that you could lay down when you're 21 years old?
Yeah, of course. Well, this is a bet. This is a game that will actually happen after I turn 21, the Super Bowl 57. Kind of a crazy bet to take down this time of year, but the Chargers, it shocks me. The Chargers actually have worse odds than the 49ers in every book to win the Super Bowl, and they're plus 1,600. And they got Herbert at quarterback. They added Khalil Mack and J.C. Jackson on defense, which somehow is going under the radar. Two awesome additions. Bosa and Khalil Mack, I mean, who is really going to stop that? I just think that's a ridiculous combination. And they also got, of course, the best tight end in the NFL, Gerald Everett, in free agency. So I like the Chargers plus 1,600 for the Super Bowl. For Super Bowl champs, obviously might want to wait a little bit into the season to really start betting on who your contender is. But it just shocked me that they had worse odds than the Trey Lance 49ers.
Right.
It's really crazy to me. I mean, the Niners were credit. They were in the NFC Championship, but I don't think anyone ever really thought, oh, this team is like a real contender. They're going to win the Super Bowl because the quarterback situation is terrible.
Yeah, I actually forgot they made it that far this last year. That is interesting. I mean, the Niners have the ability to kind of run in whoever from a running back perspective. Last year, Elijah Mitchell, and the years previous, the Rasheem Mosterts of the world, and they'll probably do it again in some capacity. And Shanahan knows how to run a team, and they don't have a top 15 quarterback. Neither of those guys, and I don't think Trey Lance is very good. We'll see if he turns into really anything at all. That team, to me, feels like they could go off the rails by week 8, week 9. It absolutely could be a dumpster fire if they just don't get it figured out. And there's that kind of internal tumult. You already have the Diva situation with Deebo Samuel. What's going on there? And yeah, man, the Chargers, hey, you have probably a top 5, easily top 10 quarterback, certainly a dude on the rise. And you mentioned everything else. That's already a good team. Yes, they missed the playoffs last year in that crazy Oakland game. The Vegas game, right?
Yeah.
Awesome game. But they missed the playoffs. It's like, yeah, but that was the type of team that if they get in, they could go toe to toe with the AFC last year for sure. Do they make it all the way? Who knows? Maybe not. But hey, I kind of like a plus 1,600 bet on the Chargers now because I think that's going to erode a bit, especially if they get off to a start that's like 2-0, 3-0, and you're probably looking at that going to plus 800, plus 900, and there goes half your moolah you could have had. So again, it's a futures bet. It's a long shot. We know that, but whatever. Gamble a little to win a lot for these preseason ones. That's a pretty fun one, dude. I dig it. I got one other I got a few other. I got one other that I really, really like. The Houston Texans are not that bad. They're not that bad. They were pretty good down the stretch. They gave teams a lot of fits. It's kind of like what we're talking about Seattle doing this year. Close games. I think they actually found a quarterback in Davis Mills. The guy can play, and he might have been the best rookie quarterback last year. I know people argue, Mac Jones for sure. Davis Mills played pretty darn good, and they just got to win 5 games. It's the over-under is 4.5. You got to lay a little bit of money. The money line's minus 115, but they just have to go 5-12. 5 wins for this Houston team who had, like by all measures, an exceptional draft, already have some good pieces, and played okay football, played pretty good football. So I just thought in general, 5-12 for that Houston team seems awfully achievable. I don't put them in the bottom rung of the NFL this year, which I think is like Carolina and Atlanta and maybe a few others. I think Houston's like that next tier up of like a team that's ascending. I can easily see them winning 6 or 7 games, and I don't care. Just win 5, and I win the bet. So loving the Texans over 5 for the season.
Yeah, and on that note, I'm shocked, especially at the disparity between the Texans and the Jaguars, who are, if not even, Houston would consider to be a little bit better of a team, just considering the real dumpster fire that the organization Jacksonville Jaguars are, and they're 6.5 is their win total, which makes that is what I was going to mention is do not take them to win 7 games.
Yeah, that seems like a stretch and a half, dude. Like I wonder what the unders, the money line on the under is there, but yeah, you could easily, I could easily envision Jacksonville in that 4, 5, 6 win total again, and those are all winners on that bet you're mentioning, man.
Yeah, and then that's you can't say they have an easy schedule, but it's not really an easy schedule for any team that's as bad as the Jaguars, right? You're the game that other teams will pick out and say, oh, this is the team we're going to beat up on. So, it just seemed a little bit crazy to me. And then you also mentioned the Panthers and the Falcons. I noticed the Saints are 7.5, and I actually really like the over there. I think they have a little bit of a tough schedule, but I mean, if they don't totally screw up, I think that they have 4 free wins in the division. If the floor is really 3 wins there, and then all you got to do is win, 4 or 5 games out of the division, it doesn't seem too crazy to me. So I like the Saints.
That division seems to me like it's going to shake out like an NHL standings or like MLB standings, where like you just get a couple teams. Like right now, the Reds have I think 10 wins on the year. Like the Nationals have 13, and they're like 13-25. Like we're talking they're already done. I'm a Mets fan, so very often I'm like, oh crap, we're done. But we're good this year. Now Scherzer's hurt. We'll see what happens. It's all good. He'll bounce back. But that division screams to me of like when you're going to have just those absolute bottom feeders that everybody beats up on. And that's what you're saying, dude, is like the Saints kind of have at least 3 to 4 gimmies there. And then maybe they split. They play the Bucs very, very well. Like,
oh yeah, they do.
The Saints give Tom Brady fits. They had that game last year as well, where they just they beat the crap out of him up and down the field.
What was it? 9-6. That was awful game.
yeah. But they just shut Brady down, like unlike any other team had done it. So that could very well be 4 to 5 wins right there in division. It ought to be at least 4 in division, and maybe they get a victory versus the Bucs. And yeah, I love that bet, man. Saints plus 7.5. Now, hopefully that we're not one of those 8s that they go get. They go 8-9 and win one of the 9s. But I think that's a really savvy bet too, because you have 2 teams in their own division that are clearly below them. Like it is a couple of tiers below them on a talent level, and that they should mop the floor with those bottom feeders. So I like that bet a lot too, dude. I think those are some really good calls. Any other ones striking you before we put a wrap on our first pilot here, dude?
Just to throw in one last one there, another futures bet, but if I'm riding with the Chargers for the Super Bowl, I got to go with Herbert plus 1,000 for MVP. I think he makes the leap this year. You got a couple other guys ahead of him, Rodgers, Brady, Mahomes, Allen, but want to take a slight underdog there. So I'll take Herbert for MVP. That's my parting shot.
Very nice. Very nice. I dig it. I like Herbert quite a bit. We will also play them this year. So hopefully his off game where they start questioning his MVP campaign is against us. But Herbert's a very, very good quarterback. But yeah, man, I am super fired up to get this going this year. I think the plan will be once preseason rolls around and the games are starting in August, you and I think are going to be hopping right in, depending on schedules, and doing a weekly show. Again, it's going to be through the Seahawkers podcast frame. You're going to get through that stream. It's going to be called PNW Prop Stars. So if you don't already follow Wilson Conn out on Twitter, I believe it's Wilson_Conn, Conn.
Right.
Did I get that? There it is. So follow at Wilson_Conn. You know me, at Clinton Bond. And if you're not already subscribed to the Seahawkers podcast YouTube channel, go ahead and subscribe. There's lots of content, lots of live videos, there's game reactions coming this year, more and more live stuff, all the more reason to subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, do all the things already. And Wilson, dude, I think we should put a bow on our first PNW Prop Stars and call it a show, my man.
Yeah, it was great to get started. I'm really looking forward to this season.
Yes, sir. All right, dude. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.